This is Dr. Joe Pat Hatem, Mayor of the City of Southport. I would like to talk to you today about the Southport Weather Tower, where we are, the historical perspective, and what you can do as citizens. Before there was CNN, text messages, cell phone news alerts, the Weather Channel, or Jim Cantori, there was Jesse Stevens Taylor and the Southport Weather Tower. These Weather Bureau storm signal towers, also known as coastal warning display towers, were ordered by the administration of President William McKinley in 1898 to be built as to implement a hurricane warning system for ships. Dozens of these towers were built along the U.S. coast, including Southport's in 1900. Jessie Stevens began her career as a cooperative observer in March of 1900. She became Jessie Stevens Taylor in 1909, marrying C. Ed Taylor, an attorney and civic leader in Southport, including serving as the first chairman of the Board of Trustees of Brunswick County Hospital, now Dozier Hospital, which opened its doors June 2, 1930. So Southport had a weather tower 30 years before it had a hospital. Mrs. Taylor served from 1900 until her passing in 1961. Her greatest challenge as a weather observer would not arrive until 1954. According to a post-storm report from the Wilmington office of the U.S. Weather Bureau, ominous clouds appeared the morning of October 14th. The barometer fell steadily during the day, and the rain squalls began around 5 p.m. By 10:30 p.m., a heavy storm swell was breaking on Wrightsville Beach. Hurricane Hazel hit with 140-mile-per-hour winds at the North Carolina-South Carolina state line at 10 a.m. Friday morning at high tide as a Category 4 storm. The Weather Bureau report said Jessie Taylor of Southport spent the night telephoning warnings to people along the coast. I can hear the voice of Jessie Stevens Taylor through the wind and the blowing rain and the dark of night and the early morning dawn. Hurricane approaching. Southport, take cover. Protect your family. Secure your boat. Say a prayer. And after receiving word from the Weather Bureau office in Wilmington of the impending Hurricane Hazel, I can see her, the 76-year-old matron of Southport, fly these large hurricane flags, red background with black square, onto the metal tower on the grounds of Fort Johnston. It has been written that in her later years, her grandchildren, the sons of her daughter, Margaret Taylor Harper, Jimmy and Ed Harper, their father, James Harper Jr., the publisher of the Stateport Pilot, would help their grandmother hoist the various weather flags. On February 23, 1955, Mrs. Taylor was honored by the Weather Bureau for heroism during the passage of Hurricane Hazel on October 14-15, 1954. During the passage of that storm, she stayed up all night to make reports to the Weather Bureau and to warn citizens of the approach of Hazel. As a result, no lives were lost in Southport, although there was much damage to its waterfront. In April 1955, Mrs. Taylor received a letter of commendation from President Eisenhower. The White House, Washington, April 9, 1955. Dear Mrs. Taylor, I have learned from Secretary Weeks of your long and devoted service as a cooperative observer for the Weather Bureau. In providing regular reports during the past 55 years on the weather conditions in your locality, you have made an important contribution to the work of the Bureau and to the welfare of your fellow citizens. Along with congratulations on your outstanding record, I send my thanks for your very unselfish service. With best wishes, sincerely, signed Dwight Eisenhower. Mrs. Taylor was presented with the Silver Medal for meritorious service, warning about the approaching Hurricane Hazel by the Undersecretary of Commerce in Washington, D.C. 19 people died in North Carolina, but none in Southport. Mrs. Taylor saved lives. A memorial monument to Jessie Stevens Taylor on the grounds by the Weather Tower. Mrs. Jessie Stevens Taylor, 1879-1961. She loved her God, country, and fellow man, served here as a voluntary weather observer and as storm warning display woman from 1900 to 1961. So where are we today? As I stated in February, an iconic Southport historic relic that has been part of our lives for as long as we can remember was severely damaged last night during the storm. It is important to our citizens and to our city that the weather tower of Mrs. Jessie Stevens Taylor be preserved. The city has worked closely with the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office, who referred the city to an engineering firm who specializes in structural, marine, historic engineering, and construction management. The plans for the replacement of the weather tower, an exact replica as much as is possible, have been submitted and approved by the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office in Raleigh. The tower will have as much of the old tower incorporated into it as possible, including the 2 lanterns, some of the rigging, the weather vane, and the mullet, which I have here with me. It will be returned to the top of the tower. The plans will be reviewed by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and will be voted on by the Board of Aldermen at the August meeting. I have asked the city manager, Mr. Hargrove, to request that Parks and Recreation meet prior to the next Board of Aldermen meeting so the weather tower can be placed on the August agenda. The engineering firm will assist the city in hiring a construction company that specializes in metalworks and historic preservation. This is an important project for our city. This is an important project for me as your mayor. Its historic value is more than the metal frame that is being replaced. The granddaughter-in-law of Jessie Taylor, wife of grandson Jimmy, Mrs. Ginger Harper, is part of this legacy and has been a major contributor to the Weather Tower Restoration Fund, as well as Mrs. Taylor's grandson, Ed Harper, whose daughter Morgan Harper is the great-granddaughter and is a direct descendant of this family and its heritage, and is the owner and the editor of the family newspaper, the Southport Pilot. The tower has an iconic legacy, a history larger than our local lore, that also encompasses and embodies the quaint beauty of our fishing village. And it is my responsibility and my pleasure to help preserve our heritage, our history, and our quaintness in every aspect, past, present, and future. And that will always be my point of view as your mayor. Southport loves her waterfront, as do thousands of visitors and tourists who travel to our great city. All are welcome to contribute to the Weather Tower Preservation Fund. You can mail your check to City Hall, 1029 North House Street, Southport, North Carolina, 28461. Payable to the Weather Tower Preservation Fund. You can find more details on the city website. Of note, those donors who give at a certain level will be recognized by a marker at the site of the replaced tower. The total cost for the tower to be replaced is estimated by the engineer to be $59,000. There have been $4,000 in contributions and an insurance payment of around $10,000. So anyone who's interested, including our civic clubs, our citizens, those who appreciate the history of our city, or those who lived in the Garrison House, like Mrs. Sharon Zack, who lived there with her husband, who was the commander at Sunny Point, who also has been a major contributor. This is an opportunity for those who want to be part of bringing back the legacy of our weather tower and honor the legacy of our city and honor the life and legacy of Jessie Stevens Taylor. Thank you.